Blessings, BookTube. Welcome to another Tag Tuesday.
I like to read. You do too. Let's get readDANculous.
All right, we're doing a tag with big thanks to Beyond Books called the 10 Untouched Books Tag. The prompt is pretty simple. It's to present 10 books from your shelves that have been there at least a year or more and present them. It's about creating awareness to read from our shelves, enhance sustainability, and maybe even save some bucks. Unfortunately, as you know, I have no shelves basically to speak of, and certainly no forgotten books on them. So I've tweaked this a little bit to do books that I would have been reading 10 years ago. So this has been a quite interesting trip down memory lane. So in 2015, I was living in Connecticut. I was a case manager, which we called service coordinators, for a forensic social work program called TAP at a wonderful agency called Reliance House, now Reliance Health, in Norwich, Connecticut. And I was living with my girlfriend of 3 years, who was also a social worker for the state, and her 3 children in a white picketed fence house. I've never been more all-American. However, I was not in love with what I called the chemical coast, where we lived around New England, around New London. And so I used to go all the time to Providence and Yale to get my culture on. So I did a lot of driving, as well as for my work, which I loved. And so some of these books are going to be to do with each of those elements that I just mentioned, of my travels and my girlfriend and my work at that time. Let's start with some biographies. I'm going to suggest biographies for social work with Jane Addams, of course, from Hull House, but also for the Catholic worker movement, a wonderful woman whose biography I really want to recommend is to read, if you can find one, a biography of Dorothy Day. I almost said Doris Day. You ever have one of those moments? And so I just wanted to make sure I got that right. Dorothy Day. This is not the years when I actually lived in Catholic workers or something like them. Um, but anyway, for social work, I could recommend those um, biographies. For the general area, you got Philly, is of course the first home of the first library in the United States, attributed to Benny Franklin. He's got a wonderful biography, well worth a good fun read, as well as Roger Williams, whose story I learned visiting Rhode Island so much. He really was, of the state founders, along with William Penn, one of the standouts. Really religious, tolerant, very peaceful in his interactions with, and respectful with respect to, the Native Americans. Just a really great character to learn more about. There's also a book by Onyache about Lee Leonard Cohen, which is going to stand for my trip to Quebec that my girlfriend took me to for one of my birthdays, which was wonderful. So many festivals going on in Quebec at any given time. Montreal, Quebec. I'd been to Quebec City many times in college. We'd go for Carnival, but this is my first time to Montreal. Fabulous place. For another birthday, she took me to Ren Fair, and I didn't think of a Renaissance book, sorry, but in the spirit of Rabelais, I did read around that time The Adventures of Simplicius Grimalshenken, which is one of the sort of Gimple the Fool, Good Soldier Schweik, one of those kind of characters that I hadn't read, and I was trying to read more German. So I used to go to a university library, University of um, Connecticut. Yeah, the University of Connecticut campus that was near us. And they would, allow you to go in and read in their library. They had a coffee house. That was fabulous. All right, so what else have we got here? Also going to Providence so often. I would often go to, the wonderful Italian neighborhoods there. And at that time, I was catching up on a lot of old Nobels that I had not been able to find because I needed the university library, as well as the newer Nobels that that had just come out that I hadn't read. So many Italians: Carducci, Montale, Quasimodo, Dario Fo, poetry, and plays. Um, Pirandello, yeah, good stuff. Also, I read the book-length poem by Frédéric Mistral, which is a French called Provençal. So that goes back before the Renaissance. A wonderful book. There are two Mistrals that won. There's Gabriela from Chile, but this is Frédéric Mistral, and he wrote a wonderful book-length poem called Mireille, a love story. Which I can highly recommend if you can find it. I was down in the stacks where you have to crank the shelves apart to get in there and find these old books. Who else did I read? Some of the newer ones. I read Moyan's Republic of Wine. I read Modiano's Missing Persons. Right, so my ongoing Nobel reading. Cape Cod is where I sort of courted my girlfriend, and we went there for a reunion of her college friends. They call them the Martyrs from Bryn Mawr University. And in fact, as a matter of fact, I courted her in part by reading her poetry on the beach there. And for our Cape Cod writer, we're gonna call on Paul Theroux, although he's a travel writer. The Iron Rooster, I might have read at that time, for example, and a Peace Corps volunteer. Like me, he probably our most famous Peace Corps volunteer author, although there are a lot of great Peace Corps volunteer authors, famous authors in fiction as well as many memoirists who've written amazing. If you can read Peace Corps memoirs about their service in their countries, they're usually really great. I've read a bunch. So yeah, I read through at that time, but he lives quite a certain amount of his time in Cape Cod. Cape Cod, was in my scene per se, any more than the picket fencing, any more than Connecticut in general. But one did one's best with it. Right, Yale. So I used to go to Yale regularly to New Haven to do cultural stuff. There was a great bookstores there. Of course, there was a really great game store. As a matter of fact, I got into game development with a group that was there, and some of us demoed our games and play tested them at the FIG, which would be the Federation of Independent Gaming conference that met there. Really great group. So from Yale, you've got Harold Bloom, whom I'm always reading, The Critic. You've got Eugenides, who I read The Marriage Plot, also wrote Middlesex. You've got Wolf's Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, that whole acid scene. Right, what else? I think I'm running out of my 10th spot probably here. I'm going to give to my girlfriend's bookshelf. Deserves some love there. Excuse me. She had many, many books. But I decided to feature one of the writers from Bryn Mawr that would have been in her shelves, a poet named Marianne Moore. Bryn Mawr is a wonderful women's college. I took her there for her birthday. We had a wonderful time visiting the campus and reminiscing about her days at Bryn Mawr. So that's a little snippet into a time when Dan was much more all-American, doing the social work and living in the house with the kids and the fence and the whole bit, the cars, dogs, even you name it, and some books. All right, so that was a fun trip down memory lane. I hope you didn't mind the way I tweaked that untouched book feature, Beyond Books. Thanks again for tagging me. That was 2 weeks ago, so I've got a bit to go to catch up to all my tags, but I'm getting there. Thank you all for indulging that little trip down memory lane, and I'll see you soon.